I've been listening to the tapes which have been saying you cannot achieve something that you're not ready to believe or accept. And I'm trying to figure out how to do one of the processes, like the focus wheel is one of my favorites. How can I know that the universe has things for me that I haven't even dared hope for? 99% done, but it won't give it to me until I can discover it. For example, if for some reason I wanted a $295,000 Bentley convertible, but I don't believe that it would ever come. So then I said, well, or a Mercedes would be nice. And then finally I get back to Cadillac and said, well, I've owned Cadillacs, I could do that. The universe has all three for me, is that correct?
Yes, and more.
And I think $295 Bentley would be enough.
Such limiting thinking.
My question is, how do I do a focus wheel that says, I've only thought of this, but if you've got something more for me, how do I get out of the way and have you let me know that there's more and what it is?
Well, the processes that we have laid out in this book and that we've been spewing for years to those like you have been listening to us, every process without exception has not been offered so that you will decide what you want. Every process has been offered to help you allow what you've already decided. For a while, we like that you heard that, and so we're going to say it in a few different ways to make sure that you heard it in the way we meant it. For a while, we called this gathering the science of deliberate creation. And then we saw people getting too worried about their thought. And it also sort of gave you the impression that you really needed to micromanage your creation. Universe, I want this. Oh, by the way, add that to it, add that to it. Oh, by the way, add that to it. When really what's happening is that through the process of life, you are letting the universe know what you want. Incrementally, in little pieces and big pieces. In other words, sure, when you're sick, you know you want to be well. And sure, when you don't have enough money, you know you want to have more money. But there are all kinds of pieces of information that you are incrementally feeding to the universe relative to what you want and who you are that you might not even be able to really speak. You could have 1,000 different encounters with 1,000 different people. And through that process, some of them good, some of them rotten, some of them satisfying, some of them disturbing. Through that process, you are giving feedback about how you like to interact with people. So feedback about how you want to help, what you want to receive, what you want to give, what things make you laugh, what things annoy you, what things you like that you have in common. In other words, all of those pieces are being finely tuned by you through the process called life, and you're spewing out preferences that Source is hearing intimately and incrementally and precisely. Source is gathering information on you better than anyone who could follow you around with a camera for all of the days of your life. In other words, Source is knowing who you are, because Source knew who you were before you got into this body, and Source is becoming that which you are becoming as you are having all of these experiences. So this clear picture of who you are relative to all things, not just cars, everything that you want, Source has become that already, you see. So the processes that we offer aren't because you now need to do the process in order to shore up your information so that Source gets it right. All of these processes that we offer are for you to move up the emotional scale so that you close the gap between who you are vibrationally and who you have become vibrationally. Another way of saying this is that through your life experience, you have become the driver of that $295,000 vehicle. In other words, you have become that. You have become that long before you own it and park it in your garage. You have become that. And you can tell by the way you feel whether you are closing that gap or not. And here's the thing that we so much want you to hear. You don't have to think about that car to close that gap. You don't have to think about the subject that you think is the subject of creation to close the gap. You just can't think thoughts that are contradictory in vibration. In other words, you can't have thoughts like things cost too much and close that gap. You can't have thoughts like they cost too much and it takes too much to insure them, and people won't like you if you drive them. In other words, you can't have thoughts that are contradictory in nature to being a person who drives and owns that vehicle. You see what we are getting at? You have to be vibrationally compatible, and it's not the specific nuances of thought related to that particular vehicle. It's that vibrationally you have to be ready for it. And so lots of subjects might come up. People will say to us, this is the most common one. Someone will have a very specific talent that they enjoy performing, that they haven't figured out how to make money from. And so they're making their money doing something else, something that they really don't even really want to do. And then they will say to us, I want to make my money from my dream talent, and I'm really good at it. And we often say, well, you've got this talent, that is sure, but you've got so many issues over money. And as you tie those issues you've got over money to your talent, then you keep your talent from unfolding in the way that it could, because you're messing it up with these money vibrations. So what we're getting at here is it must feel to you all as you're listening to us impossible to sort all of that out. And we say it is impossible to sort it all out on a thought-by-thought thinking basis. But it's easy to sort it out on an emotional journey basis. So, for example, as you're thinking about this vehicle and you're just softly visualizing it, and you're just lying in your bed one morning or sitting in a parking lot somewhere in your car with your eyes closed, pretending that that's the car you're sitting in, and you're just sort of getting the feeling of what it would feel like to be in that vehicle. What's happening is you're taking the emotional journey and you are ridding yourself of any contradictory vibration, because you're not talking about how much it costs, which you might have issues with. You're not talking about your worthiness, which you might have issues with. You're just purely fixated on what it would feel like. And as you try to smell the leather, or as you imagine what it feels like, or as you are imagining moving in it, you may be a vibrational match to it. And in those few seconds that you do that, you've done more than you've done in your whole life about many of the other things that you are creating, because you're closing that vibrational gap. So the focus wheel process, the way we teach it, and there is some confusion about it because in the first place, there's no right or wrong way to do anything. But the focus wheel, we call it a focus wheel because it focuses your vibration into alignment. In other words, it's focusing you into alignment with your desire. So when you sit to do the focus wheel, you've got something in mind. And in this case, it's the allowing of yourself to be the full manifested receiver of, what's this vehicle called?
Oh, the Bentley supercharged, $295,000.
All right. So you have this sense of what it is that you're reaching for. And it's sort of lurking there as the elephant in the room that you're not really focused upon yet. In other words, this is what this focus wheel is about. So you know that where you want to end up is feeling in vibrational alignment with that. Now, if you've seen these merry-go-rounds on the playground where the children jump on and then they make it go faster and faster and faster, and if you ever tried to get on one that was already moving, it might just fling you off in the bushes. But if it slows down enough that you can get on it, then you can get on it, and then it gets up to speed, and then you can have a really nice ride. So the idea of the focus wheel is that your Bentley is already up there spinning pretty good, and you might not be spinning fast enough to get on it. And so you've sort of got to get yourself up to speed with what it is, and that's the power of the focus wheel. So the first thing you got to do is find some way of getting on the wheel. Now today we've been saying you just start where you are and you start forking. It's the same concept with a different process, you see. You're just trying to get yourself vibrationally up to speed, and you're willing to do it gradually enough that it's real, because if you try to make too big of a jump, you get flung off in the bushes on the focus wheel process, you see. If you try to make too big of a jump as you're moving up the emotional scale, we say you fall in the crack or you fall in the ditch, you see. So you just begin somewhere, and the way you begin is by finding something that is sort of associated with what you think you want that you are not already vibrationally in opposition to. So you're looking for a belief that will get you on the wheel. So you might say something like, I deserve it. And it flings you right off in the bushes because that's too big of a jump from where you are. And then you might say, as you wisely already have told us, well, there was a time when I didn't know that I could easily drive a Cadillac. And I achieved that. So it's not so difficult to close a gap like that. And that gets you on the wheel. So this focus wheel, imagine it like a clock, a big circular clock. And imagine the numbers around the clock, 12 o'clock, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, all the way back around again. And so at about 1 o'clock, draw a small circle and write in it, I have achieved other things that at one time I didn't know I could achieve. And as you say that and feel that, don't you feel a slight release of resistance? In other words, that feels pretty good. And so now you're sort of rolling. And so now you're reaching for something else that feels at least that good, maybe even better. And so now you say something like, I'll bet there are plenty of people that own these magnificent cars that at one time were like me, not knowing they could. That feels pretty good too. Now you're sort of rolling. Now you're reaching for another statement that feels equally good or better. And so you find something like, it wouldn't be the end of the world if I never did have this car, but dreaming about it sure is fun. As you release a little more resistance. And then you say, I trust Abraham when they say that I can be or do or have anything. And this may be something that I really want to do, or it may be something that I'm testing with, but I sure do like the idea that anything that I really want, I can have, as you shore it up a little more. And you get the sense that then you might say something like, the idea of accomplishing something like this would sure go a long way in helping me to realize how powerful I am. Or you might say something like, I'm really not needing to test the universe, but it sure is fun to watch the universe respond to my ever-improving vibration. And then you might say something like, it sure is fun to feel the improvement in my vibration, whether the manifestation is here yet or not. And then you might say something like, I can really feel that I'm cleaning up my vibration relative not only the achievement of this subject, but the achievement of any subject. Surely I can feel that I'm on the right path. You get the sense of what we're talking about? And so the focus wheel, as you write on, and the reason that it's so powerful is that you stay on the subject. You don't jump off all over the place as is easy to do. Instead, you stay on the subject because you've got this thing that you are focusing toward. And once you have moved around the wheel, and it doesn't matter how much time it takes, if it's pleasurable, it's a nice way to spend time. And once you've moved around the wheel, Esther usually writes between 8 and 12 circles as she goes around the wheel. Sometimes it goes so fast she only writes 4 or 5, but usually she will write 8 to 12 things as she goes around the wheel. And once she's made it around there, back around to that 12 o'clock spot, then she writes right in the center of the wheel how she feels now about this subject, which is, my Bentley is a sure thing, and I'm eager to see how and when it will come. And then you've cleaned up your vibration. In other words, now because of, you see, life caused you to launch the creation. Source says, but of course, it must be yours. And now processes like this focus wheel have caused you to close the vibrational gap. So right now, for the first time ever maybe, you are a perfect vibrational match to what you've been asking for. Before, you wanted the Bentley but didn't believe it. You wanted the Bentley but didn't feel worthy of it. You wanted the Bentley and hoped that you could have it. You wanted the Bentley and wanted to believe it. But right now, you want the Bentley and you're in alignment with it. And so for the first time in a long time, you're sending one signal that the universe is very fast to respond to. And things start moving around. In other words, when you're offering one strong signal, if you could see the aerial view of the way things move into place in order to accomplish it, and things that you never dreamed, things that you didn't even know you wanted, fall into place in order to bring that about. Surely you can look back into your life experience. Jerry and Esther talk about how they met, and the longer they are together, the more they remember other people that they had in common, and the more they recognize that there were 20 or 30 or 40 or 50 or 60 avenues all lined up to get them together. And if the one that hadn't worked, there were several that were lined up that they missed before the one that lined them up happened. But there were many, 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 many more, many, 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 many more.